I'm Marcy Markusa, and welcome to This is Manitoba. If it's your first time with us, by the way, thanks for being here. Before we even talk about what we've got coming up in this episode, I'd like to invite you to follow us on whatever app you're leaning into and listening on. We're here every week with new content, and we'd certainly love to have you along with us. Now, normally on This is Manitoba, we are relentlessly local. But today on the podcast, we are leaning into something that is resonating here in our province and everywhere because a lot of people are worried about artificial intelligence. And there's a lot of reasons to worry about it. So today on the podcast, AI gone wrong. From tracking your moves to giving harmful mental health advice, how can we keep ourselves safe? But also, how can we harness the helpful parts of AI? We have a couple of ways we're going to be looking at that. So when it comes to location services, do you think you're not being tracked? Are you sure? We're going to have a big conversation in the back half of the podcast, all about what you should know when you accept conditions on different apps and all about what your settings should be looking like if you're trying to keep yourself and maybe your kids safe as well. So we'll talk about that. But first, we're starting with the mental health challenges around artificial intelligence, especially for young people who are struggling with anxiety and depression. Getting the right support when they need can be a real challenge. So talking to a chatbot in times of crisis can be a reasonable option, but sometimes it really can go wrong. It's a scenario that comes with some very serious risks. Joining us for his perspective on this aspect of AI is Marc Perreault. He's a professor in the Department of Computer Science at Western University. He's their Chief AI Officer. Hello.
Good morning.
So AI, and specifically ChatGPT, as I said, has been in the news lately for the role that it allegedly played in a very serious story. This is a teenager's suicide, this story developing in the news. What do you make of a story like that?
I mean, of course, it's an enormous human tragedy. And it's also a mirror we can hold up to our society to understand that this advanced, complex technology we've introduced into it is having real consequences.
So for people that missed that story, I mean, part of the aspect of AI here is that AI was seen to encourage this teen to take their life?
There have been multiple instances of that, and it's related to the way the chatbots are trained to engage the user. And so as the user goes down a particular line of reasoning, they will typically support the user in that reasoning. Most of the chatbots are also trained to, when they recognize a mental health crisis, stop, potentially alert a human and offer supportive information like suicide hotlines, but it's impossible to always get that right every single time.
And so when you say support a user, if someone is talking to a chatbot about their despair perhaps and their intention to take their life, could that be then, seen as I'm going to support you in what your intention is in this moment? And is it that risky to engage with these things right now?
For every instance where someone has harmed themselves, there are thousands of instances where the technology has been supportive. So, there's a Medium post. I put my suicide note into ChatGPT and it saved my life. And so it's someone talking about the exact opposite experience. And so you can't categorize, you can't say the technology is uniformly good or universally bad. It has different failure modes.
Got it. Now, we've seen OpenAI put out a statement saying they're developing parental controls, for example. What will it take for these tools to be both beneficial and safe for us to use when you look at this in the future for better controls?
Yeah, that's exactly the right question. So when a human practices therapy, that's a licensed profession. They have to be educated. They have to have, certified skills, and we regulate that. Right now, we have a technology that is doing some of what a human therapist does, and it's not regulated at all. On the other hand, the fact that we're having this conversation, that so many people are using this technology off-label as a therapy tool, tells us there's a massive unmet need. So what we have to do as a society is study this, bring in mental health experts and public health experts to devise guidelines, regulations, and educational resources so that we can get the maximum benefit from this while reducing the harms.
In terms of the implications of AI being trained, as you said, in the general population, as more and more people are sharing now, I mean, even their innermost thoughts with these bots, what are the concerns around privacy?
The reality is, even if the vendor you're working with promises to keep your data private, cybersecurity breaches happen. And so you have to be aware as a user that while it's unlikely, it is possible that anything you put into a chatbot that exists in the cloud could come back someday and be made public and linked to you.
Anything to add, Mark, that we should understand as we, move forward and, the potential for AI in the field of mental health only continues to grow? Because as you said, for all the concerns, there's also a lot of benefits. So anything you'd like to add?
I think it's really important that all of us talk to those who govern us and get the conversation going. How do we ensure that this technology has the maximum possible benefit in reducing human suffering while controlling all of those harms?
Really appreciate having you on with us to respond to the story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Daly there talking with us, a professor in the Department of Computer Science at Western University and their Chief AI Officer. Well, my name is Marcy Markusa, and this is Manitoba. If you're listening to us today, we'd love to have you become a regular. I always like to say we're friendly prairie people after all. We've got it on our Manitoba license plate even. So check us out weekly. Remember, we're here with brand new content. It drops every Friday wherever you get your podcasts, and consider following and sharing. Well, speaking of sharing, we might all stop sharing our locations after we hear from our next guest on our AI episode. What if I told you that every move is being tracked right now? Your every move. You wouldn't have to look far. The culprit is in your hand, maybe in your pocket, maybe it's in your cup holder right now. Smartphones have the power to track all of our moves, and that is raising also some concerns for parents, again, of teenagers who share their location on social media platforms. Now, a conversation that my CBC colleague here in Manitoba had, host Faith Fundel, with Jacques Marcoux, raised some of the concerns. Marcoux the Director of Research and Analytics with the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. So he talked about the importance of fostering healthy digital behaviors.
I think that it's important to take stock of what we do and what kids are doing when they broadcast their real-time location to a broad network of individuals. If we take the lesson that I think a lot of millennials maybe learned over the years, if we think about the early days of Facebook, where I think looking back, a lot of people realize maybe oversharing every intimate moment of their lives was perhaps not in their best interest at the time, or
Right.
maybe was like a lack of boundary setting for our digital lives. And I think that if we look at this now, we should probably be a little skeptical and just stop and just think about how we use this. It doesn't mean it's all bad, right? A lot of families use it to keep track of where, like parents may keep track of where their kids are. But I think the concern more that we have as an organization is sort of the blanket sharing with an entire network of people on social media that you may have, because I think there's some inherent risks there.
So that's a little bit of Jacques Marcoux. He's the Director of Research and Analytics with the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. Well, let's continue to talk about AI and location services. Marc Perreault is here now. He's a cybersecurity expert. Hi there.
Morning.
So as we heard, most people share their locations with family, friends, and then when your location's enabled on an individual app, people may not realize what's going on there because who is accessing that information?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of applications, as everybody knows, when you sign up for a new application, you load a new application on your phone. Typically, you'll see a prompt that says, "Do you want to enable location sharing?" And it'll give you an option to enable that location sharing either only when the app is running or all the time. So even when the app is in the background, and then finally, you can basically just decline using the location sharing. But most apps have that, well, we'll call it feature, I guess, inherent in them now.
So you said eventually you can decline using the location sharing. Does that mean that like it's not automatically going off, or if I, hit X out of that, is it going to end it? How proactive does a user have to be?
Yeah, so you have two options basically when you first install an application. Typically, it will prompt you to ask if you want to allow location services, or if you have enabled it in the past, you can go back into your settings and you can at that point turn that function off. But yeah, I mean, really, right off the get-go, app developers should be prompting you, or I think by law they have to prompt you to ask you if you're going to allow that behavior to happen.
If it's on in my settings, do they still have to prompt me? And if it's off in my settings and the prompt comes up and I say yes, does that change my settings? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as soon as you accept that you're allowing that app to track your location, it's on from that point forward until you shut it off again.
What are they doing with our information? Who's got this then?
So depending on the app provider and depending on their privacy policy and what they do with the data, many organizations will use that data to either use for themselves for proactive marketing. Some will sell that data to other types of businesses. There's a lot of apps and a lot of businesses that are part of kind of a conglomerate where they share data of different users. So they can use that for tracking and profiling. So for example, if I go to the gym 4 days a week, it'll track that location, and then maybe they'll sell that data to a supplement company, for example, and they'll say, oh, this person goes to the gym 4 days a week, maybe they need protein powder or pre-workout or something like that. So that information is highly used by the, I guess, the consumer industry to use that data in terms of targeting ads or other various reasons, but that's definitely one of the primary ones.
If we choose to decline the cookies, as they're called, or terms and conditions, um, what happens then? Like, I always think to myself sometimes, and I'm probably not that unusual for people listening here. You just hit accept because I figure then I'm going to have an easier time navigating whatever website I'm on. But is this all really about getting our data and sharing it? Because if you do decline it, will the site still give us the same service?
So I guess we'll just differentiate the two things. So declining a privacy or an acceptance policy in an app will not allow you to use the app. However, on the location part of it, if you decline using the location, it'll just make the app not as useful. So I'll use Google Maps for an example. When you use Google Maps, the I guess the perk to turning on your location is that it'll give you traffic information. It'll give you better information in terms of how long it'll take you to get to your destination. So there's some benefit to using it in an app like that. If for myself, I use it to only allow while the app is being used. So that way it's not tracking my location constantly. So that way I still get the benefit out of using, the actual mapping software without it tracking my location when I'm not using the software.
As a cybersecurity expert, what concerns you the most about the way that people share their location?
I think people are just maybe, like you said, skipping ahead and just accepting whatever pops up on their app. So that means that they're unnecessarily sharing their location data, whether it's with businesses, whether it's with, people that they're friends with. I'll use Snapchat for an example. There's what's called the Snap Map, where you essentially enable your location sharing so people can see where you are. You can do that at a granular level, so only specific people or friends or, by different groups are allowed to see your location data, which, for families and that kind of thing is useful, for partners and for parents and kids and that kind of thing. But again, if you're just haphazardly sharing your location, you could be opening it up to strangers. You could be opening it up to all sorts of different people and organizations that you potentially don't want to be sharing that data with.
Obviously, vigilance, thinking about terms and conditions, though we should be reading every word. I don't think that is probably what most people do. But is there anything else we can think about to protect ourselves?
For sure, I think that a good kind of we'll call it cyber hygiene or mobile hygiene to do is to look through your settings occasionally, because there are those times where you've disabled something or you've read through a privacy and a user acceptance policy and you understand that policy, but what will happen is the app developer will send you an email saying, hey, we've updated our privacy policy, or we've updated our user policy, which could have changes that you're not really ready to accept, or if they're enabling something that you're not really consenting to. So it is good if you do see an email from an app developer and they said that they've made an update. It's probably good to actually have a read through it and see what the differences are, or go back and check your settings and see if anything is different. Because as soon as they kind of give you that notice, that's their way of basically saying, you've already said yes to our policy. We're updating you on that policy, and inherently you've already accepted it. So it is good to read through those. I know they're not very digestible by the typical person, but I think for ones especially that carry a lot of data or that process a lot of your data, it's definitely worth having a skim through it to make ssure that you understand what the changes are.
And what about, we started by talking about a conversation that my colleague Faith Fundell had an Up to Speed that was looking more at from the younger perspective for younger people. What are some cybersecurity practices that you think parents could teach their kids around this?
So first off, I think it's critical that parents really understand, as best as they can, how these technologies work and what the risks are. I think a lot of parents in general are just misinformed and they don't understand. They don't, maybe they don't take the time to look at their child's phone. But essentially, first understanding that for yourself, understanding what the application does, what the location services are doing, how to enable and disable them. And then, having that, either if your child is old enough to kind of understand the implications, having that conversation with them. And so they understand that. I actually had a conversation about this with my teen boys yesterday about how they're using location services. And I guess I've done a decent job in my career and as a parent that they're already only doing it on a, per person level with selected friends and then with their parents. But that would be ultimately the biggest thing is just like going through those settings, make sure you understand and make sure you're carrying that down to your family as well, because we can't rely on youth to fully understand the full risk implications of what these services do.
I realize you're a cybersecurity expert, Marc, but since you're mentioning your family, your teens, you know what I mean, going through all of these things, I wonder if there's also something here for people to understand about, beyond the physical locations, protecting ourselves, understanding what all that means for tracking and such, marketing. There's also social implications to this, because if you've got your location on, as you alluded to, this came up in our story meeting yesterday. You can have a group of friends somewhere that all know where everybody is. Maybe someone's left out of that. All of a sudden, it opens a whole other world of social implications with these location sharing, right?
Absolutely. We like to say that in some ways social media has, somewhat improved society, improved communication, improved how we interact with people. But a lot of this type of thing is very much a slippery slope, as you suggested. It could lead to people not feeling included, or people like just the fact that you have access to see where people are is a very large security concern from a physical and personal security perspective. So it really has, you can't do anything now without potentially being tracked or without your data being shared. So you just really have to be very careful about what you share and just be selective about it. If people are fine with sharing their data, sharing the location data, that's up to them. But I think it's really up to people to be as informed as possible about what they are sharing.
Well, thank you for giving us the information to help with that today. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
That's Marc Perreault, cybersecurity expert here in Winnipeg. Well, as I always like to say when we wrap up, this is Manitoba. For this episode especially, if you have any ideas on what has worked for you to stay safe for AI, but also we don't want to neglect the positive aspects of artificial intelligence. So if you want to reach out to us and tell us more also about where you use it in your life and maybe even how it's helped you with mental health, or maybe you had to track down someone in your life and you use location services for good, you can always write to us. It's our radio email here in Manitoba you want to use, and it's radio893@cbc.ca. Don't forget to follow and share.